Okay, John, what we're going to do is take a look at how you're going to disassemble the unit in order to check the gear stacks for the regeneration and for the water meter. The gear stack that we're concerned about in your case, since the regeneration isn't going to completion, then we're going to take a look at the regeneration gear stack in particular. They're both in what we call the level 1 of the unit, of the head, this being level 1 at the top. This is the piece we need to get to. In order to do that, what you want to do in your particular case is to make sure that the water is shut off to the unit, shut the well pump down so that you can be sure that the well pump's not going to come on during this operation, and therefore you get wet and a little bit ugly with the whole deal. So in any event, once you've got the water shut down or the well pump shut down, what you're going to want to do first is to relieve the pressure on the unit if there is any. The way to do that is to start it into a regeneration cycle, which is simply inserting the screwdriver in the top, the Phillips head screwdriver in the top of the unit, push down slightly, turn the tab until the black dot, which you've seen in the previous video, has moved to the brine rinse position. You'll hear some sounds of noises if there is any pressure, water noises I should say, and then the noises will stop, and that means you relieve the pressure. Now, depending on how your plumbing situation is set up, you may or may not have to do more or less removal of pieces and so forth. In the worst case, what you will have to do is you'll have to remove the remote tank. The way to do the remote tank, this being the remote tank, is you push up on these pins. There's a little ball at the bottom that keeps it from coming up easily on its own. There'll also be a metal piece on the bottom, metal strap on the bottom. Once you've got that disconnected, the two tanks will actually separate by simply pulling the tanks apart, like so. Then you can set this tank off to the side here a little bit. Then what you're going to do is you're going to actually disconnect the system from the plumbing. The way you do that is to remove the two plastic E-clips which are holding the adapters in. And you may have plastic adapters, I don't know in your particular situation. However, there will be some kind of pipe adapters here. It will be held in with an E-clip. What you're going to do is you're going to lift the E-clip up on both top and the bottom as you see here, and hopefully it doesn't spring out like that. You're going to take the E-clip off from the other side. Set it aside where it's someplace safe. Now what you can do is either you can push the plumbing away, or you can pull the unit away from the plumbing. In any event, you're going to pull these two adapters are going to come out. On these adapters, what will be is an O-ring here and an O-ring here. Make sure those O-rings stay intact, and on the plumbing. At this point, you now have this unit free, so we can take level 1 off. In order to take level 1 off, you will have to remove the screws that are in all these holes around here. I've removed most of them ahead of time for the sake of what we're doing here. What you're going to do is end up removing, I'm going to remove the remaining screws, and you turn them until you hear the click, and then you remove the screws. Once the screws are removed, what you can do is put your hand down, and what you'll see is there is a seam between level 1 and level 2. Level 2 is a thin plate right there. So you put your hand to the thin plate, and you're going to lift level 1 off. And I have level 1 in my hand right now. And within level 1 there is the water meter gear stack, which is on this side. And then you have on this side over here, you have the regeneration gear stack. So what we're going to do is we want to make sure that this moves freely. And this one moves a little hard at this point. That's better. And then this one moves freely, and you can see it should be able to move like that. Usually if you're having a problem with the regeneration gear stack moving, there's usually something stuck between the gears. In order to remove that material, usually just simply moving this back and forth will get that material out of there. Sometimes you'll never see what happens or what the material is that was in there, because simply by removing the head and the water draining out of the unit will carry that piece of material with it. If you look in here and you see a lot of sediment, whatever, you know that's what your issue was anyways. In any event, whether you see a bunch of stuff or not, before you put this unit back together, what you want to do is rinse this out with water, stick it underneath a faucet somewhere and get it rinsed out. So anyways, that's what you've got here. Is you've got the gear stack here and the gear stack on this side over here. Now, once you've done that, there's one other place that could cause a problem for you, which is not as common, but it's a possibility, which is in what we call level 2. That's this level right here. And if you look carefully at level 2, what you will see is that right here there's a little tiny hole, and that little hole comes out in this area right here. The gasket is missing on the bottom here. It'll be a red gasket like what you see here. It could be blue in your particular case, but nonetheless it'll be another gasket like that. But what you want to do is you want to make sure this opening, this little hole right here, which you may or may not be able to see in the movie at this point, this hole is clear from both sides. Rinse it out and make sure that's clear. Now when you put the unit back together again there'll be a gasket on here. If the gaskets tend to fall out, all you'll need to do is place them back carefully, make sure they're down the groove, take a little water on your hand and wipe the water over the top. That will create enough of a vacuum so that it will stay together. But what is important is that all these heads are indexed. You cannot put them together wrong. There's a little indexing pin here, and there's another little indexing pin right here. So when I turn this back over, there's another hole right here. What you will do is make sure the holes line up, which is going to be something like this. And you see it goes down in and it doesn't spin. This will go down into this hole right here. This lines up over that hole, and the indexing pins hold it in place so it can't slide back and forth. Then what you'll do is you will take level 1. You put level 1 back on top. Again, if the gasket's not staying for you, then what you're going to do is wet the gasket to make sure it does stay. Here's the indexing pin. There's the hole for the indexing pin. So you lay that level 1 down on top, and you can move it around a little bit to get it laying down on there, and then it will lay down on top. And everything goes together that way. Then what you do is you put your screws back in. You place all the screws back in. I'm not going to put them all back in right now, but there's a couple things you need to know about putting the screws back in. Is when you get ready to tighten the screws, don't just start tightening them. What you want to do is back them off until you hear a little click. And when you hear that little click, they've realigned themselves with the thread, so you're not cutting new threads. That one sounds louder. Hear that sound? If you can hear that sound, when it does that, you know the threads are lined up and you can tighten it and it'll screw in. Now, it will screw in just as easy as you can see with my fingers here. If it's not screwing in that easy, which this one doesn't, means I haven't quite lined the threads up. There we go. There they are. And as you would when you're putting a tire on a car, what you're going to do is you're going to tighten the screws on opposite sides, and then go to here to tighten and here to tighten, and then go all the way around. And when you do tighten them, what you're going to do is you tighten them down until they are snug. You'll feel significant resistance. Don't over tighten them. You can always go back if there is a leak and retighten them. But you'll feel a definite stop in terms of the screw seating and all the gaskets seating together inside the unit. Then what you can do is you can reconnect the unit, which again in your case is what you're going to do is either, if the plumbing pushed away, you're going to pull the plumbing back. If you pull this off, you're going to push it back on the plumbing. Make sure those are both seated. When you put the E-clip in, what you're going to do is put the E-clip in, and you're going to make sure that the center goes in, and then the two sides go in. Same thing on the other side. Then you can slide this back together again, the two tanks back together again. Simply push them together. The O-rings will make the seat. Move this over. Push the pin down through. You should have a metal plate on the bottom. This is a demonstration unit. It doesn't have the metal plate, but you'll hold the metal plate and push the pin down through the metal plate. Again, what you want to make sure that you're doing is that this little ball or spring-loaded ball seats and it snaps through the bottom metal plate. You can hear it snap through the plastic. You'll get that same snap when it goes through the metal plate. And that's about it. You turn the water back on again, and then what you're going to do is you're going to put it in regen and see if in fact that solves your problem. In other words, the regen counts down.